Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4, a monumental episode of Mythic Morons. I'm Cheney.
And I am Sid. And Cheney, how good is it that we finally got our audio problems, fingers crossed, worked out on this one?
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, I'm not going to jinx it because we haven't heard it yet. So how stupid are we going to look if this is bad? But I think that everything is going to be good. So thank you for bearing with us for our previous episodes and bad audio. But I think the ball is rolling on this. And we got a pretty good discussion planned for you today. Cheney, why don't you... Actually, let me ask you a question, Cheney. Let me see how well you know me here. What do you think is one of my favorite genres of all time?
One of your favorite genres?
Yeah. Whether in film, books, TV, any of the mediums.
That's definitely sci-fi.
Definitely, right? It has to be. So that's why I'm pretty fucking excited for this episode of Mythic Morons today. And why don't you tell us why?
Well, as discussed last week, we did a Tom Cruise Sci-Fi-a-thon, and I think we actually picked 2 really good sci-fi movies that I'm excited to talk about too, because I really love sci-fi as well. So,
for sure. And how cool is it just to say a Tom Cruise Sci-Fi-a-thon? Like, that's never said in the world. That's not said enough, I think.
It's only 2 movies. I'm sure there's more Tom Cruise sci-fi movies.
No. Minority Report. That I realized that while we were watching too. Minority Report's a huge one.
I think we should make a thing, like make a set movie list for Tom Cruise sci-fi-a-thons.
Yeah, because I was realizing while I was watching these 2 movies that I could have kind of kept going with this sci-fi collection of films that I was just like kind of coming across. But Minority Report's for sure another sci-fi Tom Cruise classic. We watched this week 2 kind of underrated, I would say, greats for our time. Would I be speaking brash there, or would you kind of agree with me?
I wouldn't say... I don't want to get too much into it yet, but I would say I was pleasantly surprised by both.
Okay.
Especially Edge of Tomorrow.
Was it your first time with either of those movies?
It was not my first time with Oblivion, but I watched Oblivion like almost right when it came out.
Oh, okay. So
in the last time, and I was completely confused by the entire movie.
Really?
Then, not now, because I would kind of like just had a movie night with my parents that I wasn't really like actually watching, and that was like what fucking 7 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So Oblivion came out in 2013, so you must have been like around 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, so I had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Right.
Tom Cruise was just on my movie screen, so.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, we'll get into it, I guess. Like, I didn't watch this movie really when it came out either. I guess Tom Cruise isn't what I peg as like a sci-fi actor. He's just always like fucking Jack Reacher or Ethan fucking from Mission
He's always
Impossible,
a guy named Jack in a movie.
He is always a guy named Jack. That's so true. That's especially in this movie. So I guess even while I was watching it, I was thinking the whole time, like, is that like, that's just Tom Cruise in a sci-fi world, you know? Like, he just sticks out like a sore thumb in pretty much everything he's in. So I think that's why it kind of went over my head initially when it came out. Like, it didn't scream out like, oh, this is a new sci-fi movie. But holy crap, I was wrong. This is like a crazy sci-fi film, in my opinion.
Which one, Oblivion or Edge of Tomorrow?
Oblivion, yeah, Oblivion.
Oblivion, yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing a little bit.
Yeah, so let's just give off a little bit of the credits here. So Oblivion was directed by Joseph Kosinski. Actually, both of these films are directed by Joseph Kosinski, right?
Are they? Well, I didn't check the director of Edge of Tomorrow. I actually just finished watching it like 2 hours ago.
Oh, yeah, I same here. Like, literally same here. And yeah, oh, no, never mind. Doug Liman directed Edge of Tomorrow, which came out a year after Oblivion. So yeah, Joseph Kosinski is the director of Oblivion, which came out in 2013, and Edge of Tomorrow came out in 2014. But they do kind of share a couple similarities, which is interesting for like Tom Cruise in the time. Like, this was like, I guess, a sci-fi period for him. 2 years in a row of making sci-fi films.
Yeah, he was very committed to both roles. Like, he signed on, I know, for Oblivion. I don't know about Edge of Tomorrow, but he signed on pretty early for Oblivion. I think he signed on in 2011 or something like that when this movie was being planned.
Okay.
So, like, he was definitely invested in these stories, and he saw something in them. And
Have you heard
especially
the rumor that like that Tom Cruise gets overly involved in his movies, like from the get go, like from the creative point or from the production point? Have you heard that?
I did. I've actually never heard that before.
No.
No,
Well,
I haven't at all.
He's like, yeah, he's a really strong collaborator. So, I guess that must have been very conscious on his part of making these kind of sci-fi films in the times that he did. But yeah, sorry, what were you saying? What were you kind of going off of there?
Oh, what was I gonna say? Let's just do a quick weekly catch up, and then we'll
True, yeah.
we'll
We're
dive
getting
right
ahead
into
of-
these movies.
yeah,
Yeah, we're getting way ahead of it. I know. I can tell
Yeah.
you're excited about these.
I did, yeah. So sorry, guys, that was our little sneak peek into the main discussion, but we'll get into like what we were watching into this week. And Cheney, why don't you start? What have you been catching up with?
So pleasantly, F is for Family season 4 came out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know it was coming out. I just saw it that it did, and I was like, well, I guess I'm watching this all day, and I did. I watched it in a day.
Nice, nice, yeah.
One thing about this new season, they didn't really, the teaser at the end of the third season, it didn't really get as big of a payoff as I had wished it did in this season. And the main family kind of takes a back seat in season 4. But there's a huge strength in this season, and they really flesh out the side characters, which is, I thought was great, because that means they have so much more to play with, and I think it'll make the show's longevity thrive. So that's one thing I really enjoyed, was although like the main family plot kind of took a back seat and wasn't as strong as I was hoping, they really fleshed out a lot of the side characters, which I really enjoyed, especially one in particular, who was, like looking back at it now, like in season 1, he was just like a punchline character, and they like really sort of make you dive deep and sympathize with him in this season. I was like, wow, I never really expected to feel this way about this guy. So
Oh, that's cool. So this
yeah,
is,
it was really well done.
Yeah, so this is I haven't seen this show before actually. What would you kind of compare it to? I guess I hate to like compare shows to other shows if this stands on its own as being a good show, but what would you kind of, in the style of comedy or whatever, would you kind of compare it to?
Honest to God, Sid, I don't think there's anything quite like F is for Family out there.
That's cool. Okay.
It's tough to maybe in the realm of like Bob's Burger, or I'm not a big fan of was it Big Head?
Big Head, yeah, I haven't seen that either.
I'm not a big fan of that one,
No,
but like
okay.
the sort of humor and sort of like having a pretty emotionally invested main storyline that has like good humor and wacky characters sort of sprinkled in to make you laugh, and it's a pretty unique show though, and it has a really unique story to tell, because I don't think it gets told that often. So
yeah, and I'm just off kind of surface value, like I'm looking off Google here, but I feel like the family animated, like the animated sitcom family dynamic has been played out so many times, like Family Guy, Simpsons, obviously those are the originals, but like there's so many of those kind of shows. So for you to say this kind of stands on its own, that it doesn't really compare to other shows, I guess is cool. Like that in itself would make me want to check out at least a couple of episodes already. And yeah, I guess even like, this show's came out 2015 it says. So for a season 4 of a show to kind of give you that kind of depth is what you would be hoping for, I guess, right?
yeah, for sure, and that's why I was so happy that they fleshed it out, because they were at risk of just having these main characters just sort of be stretched out too far. They left some room for them, and then they're adding more content and adding more potential content down the road because they focus so much on the side characters this season.
Yeah.
So really good. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend you do. Tells a very touching tale of basically just a family trying to get by, but the main character is voiced by Bill Burr, so
yeah,
he can just make you laugh.
I love Bill Burr, and like the cast looks sick, like this is like not a cast I would expect to kind of show up on an animated TV show. This is like all kind of like A-list stars. You have Vince Vaughn, Sam Rockwell, Bill Burr, And Bill Burr's a creator, so he's probably got like a lot of his humor inbuilt, I would imagine.
It's loosely based on his life as well.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, based on his upbringing. So, West Coast suburban family.
Yeah.
With a slightly abusive dad, but not even that abusive for that time period. I don't know. It's really good.
Well, I'll check it out. That's a good recommendation. You know, that off that little description, that's all I've heard so far of the show, and I would give it a shot.
Yeah, it's great. It makes me laugh so much as well.
Yeah.
Other thing, I'm rewatching Hannibal because Hannibal got put back up on Netflix, and that's my favorite TV show ever. So
I saw that. I noticed that really recently, and we were just talking about Hannibal in our first episode. So
yeah,
good timing for that.
Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen, fucking master, fucking
our boy.
Like so owns the Hannibal role, makes it its own. It's not like the movie one, which is of course iconic in its own way, but he really, I think the TV format fits the Hannibal character more so than the movie format.
No, I could see that. Like the way with how serialized TV is, kind of those stories are being told now. It's a perfect format for an intense kind of murder mystery. If that's what it is kind of going for, like, you know.
It allows the slow burn to build
Right.
up and build up and build up, and you know the lion is behind the grass, so you just don't know when it's gonna pounce, and it's fucking fantastic, and I fucking love this show so much. I don't know how to. It's like twist after twist, fucking like.
Do you even consider like those shows that are those serials, I guess, you know, that are like Hannibal or Breaking Bad or Mandalorian even, that are just so great that it kind of just goes beyond just calling it a TV show, you know? Like, not to say TV shows aren't great in itself. Like, there are some great TV shows. But these kind of condensed stories where they really take advantage of that long format of storytelling that, you know, each episode can play out in its own arc, yet there's an extended arc over a season, and then over a couple seasons there's even a bigger arc, you know? It's like just like the layers of storytelling that never end, you know?
Yeah, Hannibal does that great. It has each of those mini arcs contained within each episode, but each one of those helps flesh out the either the ideals or the goal of the main characters, and it stretches out the main plot. And it does it really well in the first season, especially because like the first season is sort of structured as you have a bunch of different murder mysteries contained within each episode, but eventually they all just link back to each other. And then season 2 does that even further, where it's sort of the season 2 is, not to like get spoiled, this isn't really spoilery, but it's like it's the get Hannibal season. It's like he's starting to sort of come out of the weeds again. It's hard to say. Like the first scene of the second season sets the stakes, where it shows the end conflict from the last episode in the first scene.
Yeah, I'm so lost, dude, because I haven't seen it yet.
I know it's hard. It's like I can ramble about the show for hours because I fucking love it so much.
No, I'm sure whatever listeners are kind of like with you on that, like on who have seen Hannibal, they're probably agreeing with you. But
so masterful, great performances. If sort of, I can relate it to The Lighthouse, where it uses a lot of
suspenseful kind of cinema. I'm not even gonna try to attempt that word again, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it uses a lot of like you don't know what's real. You don't know, like you see crazy visions from the character's point of view. It's crazy. Cool. So it's like it fucks with your mind, and that's why I say you don't binge this TV show. You cannot, because it is so dark.
Is it too fucked up? Like it
literally gets me fucked up. I remember first watching this show in first year university, and I watched the entire season, or all 3 seasons, within like 5 days, and it like fucked me up for 2 weeks.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, so it's heavy, but so worth it.
I would probably give it a shot just to watch Mads, because he's great in pretty much everything. But
this is his best performance.
Oh yeah?
For sure. For sure.
You're just you're kind of putting this higher on my list every time we talk about it.
I mean, after
But
Game
there's
of
just-
Thrones shit the bed,
oh,
it's my
man,
favorite
like,
fucking
There's
TV
just
show.
too many good TV shows now. Like it's just I'm afraid it's gonna be one of those other shows that gets lost in the weeds for me.
I get that, but like, um,
I don't know if it's just me. Like I find it's hard for me to commit even to great shows. Like I'm good with watching a couple episodes, but like to really be drawn into a season or like to commit to the whole run of a show, I'm finding that more difficult and difficult. And part of the reason is because I keep subscribing for more streaming services now. As this quarantine continues, I'm like at like 5 streaming services now. So there's like I'm not at a lack of binging or content, like I'm just constantly trying to look for new shit. And that just leaves me like half-assing finishing shows pretty much.
I'm the same way as you. I really need to. I have a really hard time getting committed to TV shows, but I watched 3 episodes of Hannibal, and next thing you know, I'm done 2 seasons. So,
Oh, yeah? So it's like, okay, so that sounds like Breaking Bad for me. That was pretty much the last time I remember kind of in a sitting just killing a show was, which is so long ago now, but like probably, yeah, Breaking Bad for like 5 seasons, I guess. I finished that in a March break, so 2 weeks or 1 week. Yeah, that was a good week.
yeah, and it's a very digestible 3 seasons, and that's all it needs to be. So
How many episodes per season?
13.
Okay, that's on the longer side, I guess.
I find it quite digestible. I don't know, but
yeah, okay. No, I'll give it a shot. I haven't given it a shot yet, so it'd be unfair of me to speak otherwise, but I would give it a shot for sure.
And then on and off, I've been watching Parks and Rec as well. I've started watching that. That show is very funny. And that's all I have to say. Is that show is very funny.
Yeah, I've heard that's similar to The Office.
Very
style
very
humor.
similar.
It's a mockumentary too. Also, no.
Yes, completely mockumentary. So
Okay.
all my favorite comedy TV shows seem to be mockumentaries, like
Yeah.
Trailer Park Boys and The
Oh,
Office.
have you? Oh, Trailer Park Boys. Like, I want to get into an episode of Trailer Park Boys. Like, I got into that from uni. Like in uni, I was like, like if I didn't go to class in the mornings, I'd just be watching Trailer Park Boys till the evening, pretty much, with my roommates. So, I would want to get into an episode kind of comparing Trailer Park Boys to The Office, because I could make a strong argument to say Trailer Park Boys is the Canadian version of The Office in like every single way. It's like how The Office showcases American culture is how, like in the stereotype kind of way and like the over the top kind of way, like that's what Trailer Park Boy does. So like that'd be a cool episode to talk further on that. But I also wanted to ask you, like, have you seen What We Do in the Shadows, the TV show of that?
I haven't seen the TV show, but I have seen bits and pieces of the movie.
Oh, a great movie, and the TV show, I've seen the first season now. That's a good continuation of that kind of style of humor that Taika Waititi does.
Yeah, the very dry New Zealand. It's almost like an evolution
Yeah.
of British humor.
It is. That's a good way of saying it. It's like how they use. Maybe it's because we're foreigners to that obviously culture and everything of New Zealand. Well, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but like that accent, like that's foreign to us. So maybe we just find that kind of way of talking a little more funny. But it is like such a specific style. Like I feel like. How can you what can you compare it to, like almost like Wes Anderson, the way that's like that awkward humor, just from dialogue, how like a filmmaker makes dialogue just in itself awkward and funny. I think Taika Waititi does that like so well, just like that awkward humor.
Yeah, it's I compare it to British humor, where it doesn't give you room to laugh. It just is nonstop. So where are you watching What We Do in the Shadows?
I had the FX app like loaded up on my phone from because like with Rogers or whatever, so I was just kind of streaming it on that.
You really are all over the place with the streaming services.
Yeah, I had to make sure like I have a folder with all the apps kind of in it, just to make sure I have shit on lock.
Did you watch anything else?
Yeah, couple of things happened this week. I wanted to get back more into a show that I was previously really into, which was called The Midnight Gospel. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so that's another show created by so it's a show, you know Duncan Trussell, you know who he is?
Yes, I know Duncan Trussell.
Yeah, so if, for people who don't know, he's like been on the Joe Rogan podcast many times, and like I was gonna compare it to like how we were just talking to F is for Family, like with Bill Burr, like that. Two guys who are frequently on the Joe Rogan podcast have their own shows, but so this is Duncan's kind of like podcast form show. Like you said you never saw it?
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, so this is like such a hard show to talk about because it's like a conversation. Like it's a basically a podcast into a show format. Like it's what we're doing now, which is having a conversation, but in this kind of like psychedelic, trippy, animated world. Like, okay, if I'm just gonna break it down, it's basically within the show there's a guy named Clancy, which is like this animated character, and it's like he lives in one dimension which is probably like higher than other dimensions, right? And he has the ability to kind of go into other worlds like within his world through a simulator kind of thing. So like this whole thing is going to like worlds into other worlds, like very trippy, very psychedelic out there ideas. But within that, so like within this kind of crazy out there setup, he's having these really just amazing kind of conversations with these people. Like honestly, I've never heard of most of the people that have been on the show, but like one guy was like a guy who was in prison for like all of his life. So he's talking about his experiences from when he was in prison, and they're all just kind of conversations about spirituality and consciousness and like just very mind expanding conversations, like truly mind eye opening kind of stuff. You know, like if you watch Joe Rogan's podcast, or if you're into that kind of style of conversation where, you know, like just an inquisitive kind of like question answer, trying to learn more about yourself or more about the world, like the show takes that approach of conversation style with the most amazing like out there visuals. If you're like into, would you say you're kind of into that? I guess you are into Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah. I just have a hard time grasping how they would like convert that into a show format.
That's what I'm having a hard time even trying to translate it to you. It's like it's such an I don't know how it works. It's truly amazing how they got it to work as a show. Like honestly, I truly think it's like one of the greatest shows, like if not just one of the most important shows people should watch. Just because like if you're open to kind of like what we're doing now is like conversating and sharing our ideas and trying to share those ideas and like spread those ideas not just amongst ourselves but like to more people out there. And like that's what the value of that show really is like the more we kind of talk to each other, the more we have these kind of conversations, you inevitably learn more, and like that's just the process of growth. And like the whole show is this like very spiritual vibe of like expanding your consciousness and growing as a human being. So I think it's an important show, not just a great show, but like an important show for people to watch. And I watched the last episode of that season, like the first season today, and like honestly it got me pretty emotional. Like in that episode he's talking to his late mother, and like it's just such a like honest conversation between like a mother and a son, you know? Like it just, you can't not get emotional listening to that kind of thing. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, like if you don't really get what I'm talking about, I wouldn't blame you, because it's, I don't want to like paraphrase those conversations. I just wouldn't do it justice. But he just talks to like experts in very different fields, or just like very smart people, very intellectually up there people. So I would recommend it to you, Cheney, or like anybody listening. That's for sure a show on Netflix to watch.
How many episodes is that first season?
I think it's something like 10 episodes or 9 episodes, something like that.
And are they like an hour long?
No, it's really short, actually. I think they range from like between 20 and 40 minutes, something like that.
Okay, I can probably bang that out in a couple days.
Yeah, easily, like kind of like, you know, if it's if you're one of the people that kind of like put something on right when you wake up, put something on Netflix, or like, not doing much in the day, or you just kind of want a background show while you're eating or doing homework, whatever. It's like kind of perfect for those situations. Easy to kind of like listen to in the background. You don't have to pay attention to the visuals, but like the visuals add so much more to it. It's unreal. And if you watch it, you'll like immediately know why I'm super fond of it.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot for sure.
Cool. And yeah, did you also happen to see the PlayStation 5 reveal?
I didn't because I'm an Xbox guy, but I know of some games that I'd be interested in, but unfortunately are probably going to be PS5 exclusives. Even though I play on PC now, most of my games. So,
yeah, I didn't know you were an Xbox guy, actually. I thought you were like probably more into PC.
No, I've had
even the consoles.
Xbox since literally the first one came out. I've had an original Xbox and 360, and then I have an Xbox One right now. So
do you prefer the PC to the consoles, or
right now I do. I've only had a PC for a couple of years, but we basically just got Xboxes to play Halo because lots of nostalgia, probably more so than any other piece of media in my entire life is up in Halo. So
yeah, a lot of people I grew up with say that like Halo was the biggest game for a lot of people, but I had Xbox growing up too, from the 360. I think that wasn't my first console, but yeah, I had the 360, and I never owned a Halo game, nor that I ever really wanted to. I was just more into Call of Duty back then,
If you like sci-fi, then Halo is definitely something you should check out. And just
in terms of sorry, I'll let you finish. What were you saying?
You can probably just watch the cutscenes and you can get most of the story out of that.
So are you saying like to check it out in terms of the story, or like multiplayer is just because like people, I feel like when people play Halo, they're talking more about the multiplayer now.
A lot of people are like that. The multiplayer was a big deal. We could never afford Xbox Live. So like I played through the campaigns of all the Halos, like tens and tens of like I can't even count the amount of times I played through the Halo campaigns, and like so I'm like really deep into the story. I've read novels based on the Halo universe. True. So
there's
it's
a
like
whole, like expanded universe with
there
Halo
is
also, right?
Yeah, it's a rich enough lore and history within the universe that there is like an expanded universe that has a bunch of other micro stories within the main plot. Like the main plot is like, again, well, I don't like comparing things to Star Wars, but like in terms of the main plot is as insignificant as the Star Wars main plot, if that makes sense.
In the sense of like simplicity.
In the sense of simplicity, and then also in context of the universe's history.
Okay.
So
it's
kind of massive.
You're dropped into the middle of this massive epic story. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, because they just like Episode 4, A New Hope, they never really expected it to get as big as it did, but they left enough in there to allow it to expand later on. Same thing with Halo Combat Evolved, the first one that came out in 2001. So
okay,
that was one of the first video games I've ever played when I was 4 years old. Was Halo. So, yeah, it's like. So I've never really been a PlayStation guy ever.
Okay, I got you. I've kind of been leaning more into PlayStation as the generations have passed. I started off with actually, if we're going to go into history, I had the PSP as probably my first handheld. No, actually, going back even further, my first handheld was the Game Boy, which is like, so I'm a Nintendo boy, I guess, from heart, the Game Boy and the old Pokemon games and all that shit. So like that went into the Wii, and then from there, I guess like growing up, like you kind of want to move away from Nintendo a little bit. So Sony was like the next step up there for me. Like the PlayStation Portable was huge, and then the next step from there was like the PS2, and then the PS3 and the PS4. So I've always just been attracted to that line because of like the exclusive games that come with it, not for multiplayer or any other reason. That I always had my 360 to like play COD with friends, but and like even today, for the biggest reason, like PlayStation's games are by far better than Xbox. Like Xbox now really is banking on Halo as their mainline title, and that's like 20 years old at this point. Unless
I would agree that
Xbox has some.
I would agree that
titles
PlayStation has better exclusives right now.
Yeah.
I won't deny that. Games like Bloodborne, pretty sure your Death Stranding game is exclusive to PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
They got Demon Souls. They're doing the remake, which is the thing that really caught my attention.
Yeah, I saw that in the review also. Yeah.
So that's going to be PS exclusive. So I would agree they have better exclusives right now, but Xbox is sort of addressing that. And they like bought up
I
a
saw
bunch
the
of
Xbox reveal too. Yeah, they did. They bought like a bunch of studios and are like making more original games now, I guess too, right?
Yeah, so they got an event coming up in July. That's going to showcase all the Xbox exclusive games. So I'm waiting on that.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm probably not going to buy the next generation. I'll just upgrade my PC parts and then I'll be good to go for however long again.
Yeah, the main reason I actually wanted to bring it up was like some of the original games that they announced in this reveal kind of caught my eye, which was the new Spider-Man game, which they announced was Spider-Man Miles Morales. Did you, when the Spider-Man came out, see anything about that? Like watch the cutscene movie, or I know you didn't play the game, but did you look into that game at all?
I watched the story on YouTube, all the cutscenes. Is it? I was confused though. Was it? Is it a Miles Morales game or is it just gonna be DLC?
They said it's gonna be a standalone game, so it's not a sequel to the first Spider-Man game that they released, but this is gonna be like within the universe, its own standalone game that you have to pay like an additional whatever fee for, like not a DLC price.
Yeah, okay. Because I saw people were complaining that a lot of the locations that were showcased had been already used, so they're not like changing maps, which it looks like they're not changing maps, which a lot of people are kind of disappointed by, because if they're gonna base a whole new game but still have the same map, it's kind of disencouraging to
bit, I guess, like a bit of it's what they said was they're taking those assets from the previous game, so like the Manhattan Island, I guess, and they'll just build on top of that. So like from what I saw, the graphics already look a little better from the original Spider-Man game, and I guess they're kind of putting a little tweaks here and there, like weather, more dynamic weather, more, I guess, like kind of better lighting, I hope, better environmental graphics, stuff like that. And Miles Morales' character, I guess, is from Brooklyn also, so hopefully that becomes a playable part of the map. So hopefully that it's a bigger map in this game. But I played the game like right when it came out. That was a big reason that I bought the PS4, was just for that game. And I thought, like, as far as Spider-Man stories go, it's one of like the best Spider-Man stories and best Peter Parker portrayals. Would, like, if you've seen the movie, would you kind of agree with me there, or think there's better in the movies?
Again, like, I've always been on the other side of the bridge of this. I've always really consumed DC content, so I've never really been a Spider-Man guy, but I know a lot of the gripes people had with the Peter Parker and the Spider-Man in the new MCU movies were erased or pushed to the back, and people that I know or that I heard online that are pretty big Spider-Man fans, they definitely thought this was a more accurate portrayal of what the character's supposed to be. He's supposed to be this broke guy who's just trying his best. He doesn't have Tony Stark, fucking trillionaire, looking after him in the background all the time. It's just Peter Parker trying to get by, but also trying to be a hero. So I definitely thought that the story was definitely well told. It kind of took a interesting take on something I never saw, which is the relationship between Spider-Man and Doc Ock. So
yeah, it was
that was
much
cool.
Deeper than the movie, kind of as a conflict of like their relationship was much closer. Their conflict, I guess, was much more felt. I felt like from him and even the other villains, like you like as far as stories you kind of get dropped right into goes, like we're not given the origin story again, like you're with a Spider-Man in this one where he's been Spider-Man for a couple of years, and like these are villains that he's, other than Doc Ock, but most of the villains are villains he's encountered. So he's a veteran Spider-Man at this point, and which is cool, you know, like Spider-Man always used to be like one of my favorite superheroes growing up. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man films are always going to be like in my top 10 of greatest, not greatest, I won't say it like that, but like definitely my favorite films of all time are those Sam Raimi films. Like that's a huge part of my childhood. So Spider-Man as a character is up there as influence, but this Spider-Man being a grown-up Spider-Man is a cool perspective because like we haven't got that, like, you know, like growing up yourself, you want to see that kind of reflection in the characters that you watch, and this Spider-Man kind of takes like a mature, more like realistic look at like what's a 22-year-old or 24-year-old Spider-Man, you know, like this guy's gonna have relationship problems, this guy's gonna have family problems, like you get much more into the relationships of who Peter Parker is. And like you were saying too, it's just like it's kind of taking the best of the Spider-Mans from the movies and like almost making like a best of the story. I think like a good cumulative of the Spider-Man attributes, you know, what he stands for, what he is as a character. It takes all those points and kind of tells a really good story based around those.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not like a Spider-Man expert, but definitely an enjoyable story. And they made Peter, especially in that Spider-Man game, really well fleshed out, and I could sympathize easy with him. So it's cool to see what they're going to do with Miles, because I don't really know much about Miles. I didn't even watch Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh no.
But no.
That's another, I guess, like that's what almost I was hoping for you to bring up, because I thought a lot of people say that that iteration of Spider-Man is their favorite Spider-Man story, I guess, in general. Like that, I never felt that way from it. Like I think it's a really good film, but do I think it's the best Spider-Man film? No. So I've heard that point before, so I almost was expecting you to kind of give that counter to the Spider-Man story. But you are saying you're a DC guy, so what was the superheroes that you were growing up with, or the comic books you were reading and stuff?
Obviously Batman's my guy. He's pretty much like, there's just that one Justice League cartoon, so I really liked Batman, and then Green Lantern out of that Justice League cartoon, who was not Hal Jordan. He's the other John Stewart. John
Stewart, the black one. The black. That's the one I grew up with, was the Black Green Lantern too. What show was that? The Justice League of America show?
It was just called Justice League, and then like 3 or 4 seasons in, it was called Justice League Unlimited. So, right. It was the original creators of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond, and they work on this. They just said, "Fuck it, let's do a Justice League cartoon too." So, really talented people worked on the show, and it was kind of like before the MCU was a thing. You would see crossover episodes with like different TV shows done by the same guys that did Justice League, sort of crossover. So shows like Static Shock, they'd bring in that character, and then they'd go to the future. They might be with Batman Beyond and stuff like that. So it's like, that was a really fleshed out and really good show. And I always tend to go back and rewatch episodes when I can, when they pop up on YouTube. So that was mostly my DC thing.
Yeah, I always felt like DC's strongest kind of films were always their animated films, or even their shows. You know, like even till today, I think rather than their live action movies, their animated films that they release are far better in quality.
I'm just waiting for the Zack Snyder cut.
Yeah, are you into that? Are you into that whole movement?
You know what? I think I am, because when I heard how much was left on the cutting room floor, it was incredible. Zack Snyder had 4 hours of footage. Like, it was like a 4-hour movie without cutting anything. And then...
And what we saw was half of that. So
No, less.
Well, it was a 2-hour cut.
Right, but like even the content we saw within it was reshot.
There was a lot of reshot. Right, there was a lot of reshot. Man, Joss Whedon really like they did Zack Snyder dirty because they essentially made a Joss Whedon movie and put Zack Snyder's name on it. So I could see why he's pissed. You know, like the guy's movies never got released.
So like potentially we've only seen 25% or even less of what Zack Snyder had originally put out.
Yep, that's what he said. He said you've only seen 1/4 of the story, essentially, which is nothing. Like, you know, like there's a whole mythology of what he was trying to do, which is why, like, I'm also really into, like, you know, people will say what they will about Zack Snyder as a filmmaker and storyteller and director. I think, you know, like, he's almost in a league of his own from other directors. Like, he's not like Christopher Nolan in the sense of how he made Batman or other filmmakers, you know, and their takes. Like I can see the care he kind of puts into the story, and like he was really trying to build a world and this universe, and maybe, you know, the studio was trying to rush the thing with like how Avengers set up their franchise. And, you know, I think this franchise would have benefited so much if they had really just like allowed each character to kind of have their own movie and let that mythology build through a series of films, not to just copy Marvel, but like, you know, like I like what they're doing now, though. Also, just every stories doesn't have to mean shit to the other one. You know, like let it be its own thing, like the Joker. Like that's also pretty cool. But yeah, like we need to see what the guy was making with a 4-hour cut for sure.
Right, and it's gonna get released in like a non-typical format. So usually movies aren't allowed to be 4 hours long.
No.
Like, for fuck's sakes, like, when Hateful Eight was in theaters, they had to give an intermission because it was so long, right?
Really?
Because that movie, because that movie's like 3.5 hours or something stupid. So, like,
I know on Netflix they even released like almost like a 6-hour cut of that, I think, or like something longer. But I think HBO is almost debating to cut it as a show, as like a 4-episode show, which would make sense subscribers wise. Like if people just kind of, I know, like if I subscribe for HBO Max, it'll just be to watch that movie. But if they say like, oh, we're gonna extend this into a multi-week episodic kind of story, and you gotta stay on board, then, you know, I could see them doing it that way just to bank a couple more bucks.
I guess, but like I really want them to try the 4-hour thing, because like I know movies, it's like hard to keep someone's attention for 4 hours, and like
how long was the Lord of the Rings? Like the longest Lord of the Rings.
Oh fuck! It's fucking. I think Return of the King director's cut is just over 3 hours. It's actually not even as long as Hateful Eight, but it's up there.
But it's up there, yeah. And I know they release extended versions of those movies also, just to like kind of add on some scenes or add on extended cuts of the scenes. And so, you know, like if they can release those in theaters, there shouldn't be a problem with releasing a 4-hour Justice League.
But that's the thing, though. It's not the same story.
No, what? Oh, because in the sense that
it was totally rewritten. This is not the same story that Zack Snyder is putting out. It's got, like, Jason Momoa put out a teaser today.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's literally just Darkseid is now the main villain. So
no, but Darkseid was always the setup villain from the beginning. Like, he was gonna be in the movie, but always
they cut him out, like, and then they didn't even. You know? They didn't, like, they kind of alluded to him a little bit, but not in a way it's like...
Oh, not enough. It was like just like a line. It was a throwaway line. Oh, all hail Darkseid, some shit like that. Yeah,
it was a throwaway line, and then the teaser for the next Justice League movie was not even Darkseid. It was fucking... oh, God. The Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
So... Yeah,
I know, and that, like, man, that amount of stuff Zack Snyder was setting up. Like, remember the end of Batman vs Superman with the Legion of Doom set up? Like, that, where was he going? What kind of story was he telling, you know? And
that's not Zack Snyder.
What do you mean?
That wasn't Zack Snyder's, like... That's the thing, though. This is a completely unique situation to anything we've ever seen with regards to movies ever. Because, like...
Oh, I know, yeah, for sure.
Like, we've never... Like, it's not some director just releasing... his edit of the movie, so adding certain scenes and taking certain scenes out to express more or less his vision. This is Zack Snyder had a movie, it was taken away from him because of tragic reasons, And now he has full reign again. And he's like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just put what I had originally envisioned into play and see what happens.
Yeah. But, okay, this is where it even gets a little more complex, though, because this is what he said. I would watch he did, like, this whole experience of, like, he rewatched from Man of Steel to Batman vs. Superman to, I think just those, but, like, he rewatched them live and, like, live streamed it all, so he was answering a bunch of questions into the behind the scenes of it all, and he said, like, the original script that the original idea they had for Justice League, and I guess they wrote it into the script, like, they had a Justice League 1 and 2, if you remember that. They were supposed to be, after 1 came out in 2017, 2 was supposed to come out in 2018, right after, and it was supposed to be 2 halves of the same story, essentially. Like, it was gonna be like how Infinity War and Endgame were essentially a part 1 and part 2. And he said even eventually what he had to shoot still wasn't that initial idea, because Batman vs. Superman was received the way it was. So, like, at that point, Warner Brothers just lost confidence in him completely and his vision. They were just like, you gotta dumb this shit the fuck down. Like, people aren't with it, bro. Which is stupid, because that's just, like, you know, the vocal minority who was talking.
It was people who didn't even care about the movies in general. Like, obviously, like, Batman vs. Superman, I thought was very bad.
It's not a great movie. It's not even a good movie, but it's fucking entertaining. And, you know, the extended version is a much better movie. If you've ever seen that, the 3-hour cut of
No,
Batman
I
vs.
haven't.
Superman. Oh, dude, it's the movie that should have been released in theaters. Because, again, you know, this is Batman versus Superman and Justice League. Like, fuck about the Avengers. Like, that was the biggest superhero team for any kid growing up. Like,
it was the first superhero team ever.
It was the first. No, the first is Power Rangers. Okay.
Was it? Yeah, but
are you talking about in life, like in the history of the world, or in people's hearts? Because in my heart, it was Power Rangers.
No, we're not talking about hearts. I'm talking about, like, literal history in terms of, like
for sure,
cross-story team-ups.
Then it was Justice League. They were the first.
The Justice League of America.
Integral of, like, American history. Yeah, like, just, you know? So those movies deserve the epic main, like, fucking theater experience, you know? Like, the fact that it's being put on HBO Max and you gotta see it only on that is, you know, like, take what we can get, but it shouldn't be a show. I don't think it should be a 4-hour epic, like, this is what we were gonna show you and now you're finally gonna get it, you know? Like, as fans, like, holy fuck, like, we no, I don't want to say we, like, I did anything, but, like, people, I guess, you know, just people are amazing for that.
I never lobbied
the studio. Mm-hmm.
I never lobbied for the Snyder Cut because I didn't think it would happen. But,
no, I didn't either. I thought it was such a fool's dream to think, like, wow, like, these people are committed to, like, a cause that is just, you know, like, it's cool. Like, it was cool how he interacted with his fans with behind the scenes pictures, and I always looked at that thinking, like, wow, what a, you know, like, even if the movie's bad or was gonna be not great, it still had a bit of greatness there. You know, the intention, I always believe in the intention, you know? If people's intention behind the thing are out of, like, not to sound sappy, but, like, love, you know, like, they really love that property, that story, and they're telling it with, like, coming from a pure place, then, you know, as an audience, you're gonna pick up on those things. Whether the movie is critically, like, a great movie, it's not gonna be the Citizen Kane, it's not gonna be a Blade Runner or, like, you know, anything profoundly awesome and, you know, profound at the same time. But if I can sit through 3 hours of Batman kicking Superman's ass and then reuniting at the end of it, and, you know, like, it's somewhat good, and you know, I'll buy that. Like, fuck, who wouldn't buy that?
Whether we like it or not, whether the Snyder Cut is good or not, this sets a new precedent, and this is movie history. It's so weird to say it like that, like, this subpar superhero movie, sort of lifeless, soulless thing that made almost no money and made Warner Brothers shit their pants and, like, redo every single DC property, like, rearrange it.
Well, it restructured Warner Brothers. If
yes.
You look into, movie. That's a good thing that you mentioned about movie history, because that movie had to, like, restructure the entire studio, Warner Brothers, and historically, Warner Brothers is still, like, one of the strongest studios. Like, you know, if Disney doesn't take it over, you know, but yeah, like, they had to let go of a lot of people after that movie came out.
Yeah, and then so like historically speaking, this is the first time anything like this has ever happened, and it's only happening because of a fucking national pandemic, because people are scrambling to get content out so they can continue to get revenue for these media companies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it wouldn't happen because if it wasn't for the pandemic. That's true, because there was like, you know, this release of Snyder Cut thing was going on for like a couple of years now, and for the longest time even Warner Brothers was saying like there's not a chance it's happening. But I think AT&T now owns the company, like Warner Brothers and HBO, so they made that last second kind of split decision call that was like, no, fuck are you guys doing? Like, you're releasing a streaming service with no original content or no noteworthy content. Like, who's gonna buy into that? And you got like 10 million people on Twitter telling you they're gonna pay you to release that movie. Fuck are you doing? Give that guy the money and release that movie, you know? What are they giving him? Like $30 million to finish it?
Yeah, it's like, it's not even like they need to shoot anything. All the footage is there, and everything else can be special effects.
Oh, bro, he asked, "Can I shoot more?" Ooh, that's a slippery slope. That's a slippery slope.
We might get a 6-hour Justice League movie.
Yeah, man. Like, holy fuck. He could be like, "Oh, I had time to think, man. I know what you guys want actually, and or not even that, but just yeah." But I don't think they're giving him that kind of flexibility. I don't think Ben Affleck wants to come back and do Batman again either. I think they're all over it.
Oh God, no, and he shouldn't.
No, poor guy went through too. But honestly, as far as Batman's go and Bruce Wayne's go, I really like Ben Affleck as both.
I did too. It was nice having a beefy Batman.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
He reminded me a lot of The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, that's
Batman.
what a lot like.
Very comic book accurate. Very comic book accurate.
Like, yeah, even the costume was the big bat, the big bat symbol.
The texture, that kind of like fabric-y texture, like it looked like it didn't, like, I don't know, it looked like fucking ripped out of a comic book. I think that's what I really liked about the DC universe that Zack Snyder was creating, was it didn't necessarily have to be the most comic book accurate thing, but it could stand parallel to the comic book storylines. I think he was kind of trying to go for an Injustice, like dark Justice League kind of story, which, like, what the fuck, man? Like, that's awesome. Like a dark superhero team up movie. Like, I want the anti-Avengers movie. I want to see dark shit in a superhero movie. You know, like, we're getting Avengers, we're getting all the happy shit. Why would you get the director of Avengers to do Justice League and make it an Avengers movie? Like, that just, who's like, you know, like, holy fuck. There's
maybe the market,
the
like, in terms of, like, I know you're not the biggest fan of general audience stuff, but like in terms of marketing, like, it's probably better for the studio.
That's what they were thinking.
That's what they were thinking. Like, it didn't end up that way.
Look at how it ended up. Exactly. So who's to say who's right? But they're definitely not thinking. That's what I mean. Like, people shouldn't think from the perspective of general audience too much. That shouldn't have too much weight. You know.
And that sort of leads into our main discussion.
Sure. Yeah. Perfect segue. Good job, Cheney. Continue.
Thanks, buddy. So, I picked these two movies specifically because they were, well, one, they starred Tom Cruise, and despite the Scientology stuff, Tom Cruise is a fucking badass motherfucker, so...
Yeah, no doubt.
They're both sci-fi films as well.
Mm-hmm.
In that sort of wide genre. They're completely different films, but still both have sci-fi settings. But they didn't make any money, and no one saw them whatsoever. And those two movies are
so weird.
Yeah, it's Oblivion in 2013, starring Tom Cruise, and then Edge of Tomorrow, Live Die Repeat in 2014, starring Tom Cruise. So, I think we should start with Oblivion, because I have sort of some... I got one thing. This was probably, like, out of either of these movies, Oblivion was the movie I wish was more successful than Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there too. I'm more shocked at Oblivion's lack of success, or not even just money wise, but just out of like appreciation of a sci-fi movie. Like, people appreciated Edge of Tomorrow, but like Oblivion went over my head, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people's head, you know. So Yeah, I agree.
I think it set up a setting. If you look at like, I want to look at like 280 sci-fi franchises that had like a pretty simple, straightforward first story, but it allowed them to expand outwards. And that would be like, I'm not saying Oblivion is as good as these two movies, because I don't think it is, but like Ridley Scott's Alien and then Predator. Where you have these two sci-fi franchises that have like humble beginnings that sort of branch out to like a wider setting. And I think Oblivion has the world that they created for Oblivion has that potential. And I was really sad that like it wasn't as successful, and like we don't even get like graphic novels or any other short stories that goes along with it.
Yeah. It's such an amazing sci-fi world. Like that's a good comparison to Alien, that it kind of establishes this, like, it's very sci-fi, like down to the just like all the, you know, like the rebellion that's happening on. Okay, we should just start by saying this conversation of the main discussion will get into spoilers. We'll try not to hit major plot points because both these movies kind of have twists, so don't want to ruin the big twist, but we are going to get spoilery. But you know what I'm kind of talking about, how this movie has all those elements of a sci-fi that you want, and I didn't expect that coming into this movie at all. Like, I was expecting a very straightforward, like, from the opening frame of just Tom Cruise talking, like narration, I was like, oh, like they're going the narration route to explain this world. Like I wasn't into it from the beginning, I'll be honest, like right from the opening narration bit. But as the story was kind of building on the world, and you know, it really sells you on a couple points early on, like of who are the heroes, who are you rooting for, and what are people doing on this world. And it kind of just, everything reinforces just, yeah, the world I guess they're trying to create, without saying it too many times. But what did you think of that opening from the narration? Because I know you're not a big narration fan, but how do you think that either helped it or didn't help it, I guess?
The thing is, like, this was my second watch of the movie, and I knew there was a twist.
Yeah.
So I kind of just cruised along through the movie waiting for the twist to happen, because I knew the twist was big and I didn't understand it the first viewing, however many years ago that was, like 7 years ago. So I think like this being my second viewing and just having a vague idea of what the plot was, it really actually maybe enhanced my viewing, because you actually get further perspective into the ideal that the main characters are in. If you rewatch the beginning, you're like, oh, like they're actually
no, I definitely thought about that after. Like I had to rework my framing of the beginning after the twist happens, you know, then, because obviously, you know, it's not just a narration just to bog down exposition. I think there is a purpose there. It's trying to show like the you know, like how this information is just basically fed to Tom Cruise's character, to Jack Harper or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
The most basic
Tech 49.
Tech 49, which is, you know, like all that shit is so fucking cool to me. Like he's Tech 49 out of how many techs? Like
that's what I like. How, like, I was talking, like, I was watching this with my girlfriend. I was like, and like at the end I was like, how cool would it have been if like we got to see the I can't actually, no, we can't get into that yet. Fuck. Anyways,
save the deep spoiler stuff for like the end. I guess.
For sure. But yeah, like what I like think about the beginning portion, it's like it's set up like a cliche sci-fi movie.
Yup. Yeah, big time.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Like big time, like on purpose, like it made people.
It's trying to give you, all the tropes up first. Like, here are the rebel faction, or the aliens that are antagonizing the humans.
Earth was attacked, and now it's
Earth was
up
attacked
to
by aliens. Like,
Jack Harper to save humanity.
You know, there's actually a lot of similarities between the opening of Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion, in that sense of like how narration is used and how they're trying to sell you an idea. The whole thing is about like selling you this idea in both the movies, and that's why I actually thought like both the films were directed by the same person. There's some just directorial choices that are very similar, but just like hitting on our main theme of why this movie might not have been so successful in 2013 is because there was a sci-fi movie in 2013 that came out very similar to Oblivion. Do you know what it was?
No, I didn't see.
It was Elysium, starring Matt Damon, which is another movie about a guy wearing an exoskeleton suit on a dystopian Earth with a floating space station above him, out of reach.
I fucking watched that movie too. Elysium with Matt Damon?
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah, how much did you look at the
Yeah.
Did you look at the box office?
Yeah, so it's not too much of a different box office. Like Oblivion definitely did worse as critically and commercially goes. So I think it might have stolen some of the flame from Oblivion.
Yeah,
and I can't remember Elysium that much, but I definitely like Oblivion more on every aspect, like from the sci-fi tone of like just how deep it went into sci-fi and all the visuals, man. Like, can we talk about the visuals also and like the score? And
okay, yeah. There's one thing I want to talk to you about this. Okay.
Yeah.
You've brought this up in like our private conversations a bunch, like the use of an LED screen in The Mandalorian.
I love that you brought that up. Yeah.
Right? They fucking used it in this movie.
They did. Yes, sir. This is one of the first movies to use that style of projection, like front screen, almost like like an LED projection, in real time camera photography. You know, so and what a good use of it. Like I love that they did that instead of a green screen. Like that just sold it to have like a real sense of the sky, that they were above in the clouds kind of thing. Like the aesthetic, just from set design to the props, like everything was just so clean and cool, how you want a sci-fi film to be.
Yeah, they went to like tips of mountains and shot cloud footage to project it around the set, and like everything that all the set shots that happen within their sky base, all of that is done with no green screen. It's all projection, except for maybe like some CG renders of the scene, but like everything in and around, like on the landing pad, like that's all practical with the LED, which is
with the LEDs, and then what the LED is showing is also practical footage. So it is just it's just good composition there.
So I think this movie might age quite well actually, because it uses a lot of practical stuff and like smart uses of CGI and other things.
I couldn't tell when the CGI was used. Like there's obvious uses of it, but you're not paying attention to it ever. And it's because they established that use of practical. Like you get a sense like this is the real world. And another thing I really loved about it is big Death Stranding vibes, bro. Big Death Stranding vibes.
I know you would. Like this movie probably has, because I don't know, I didn't play Death Stranding, so I don't really know. Like obviously, like the apocalyptic landscape to me for this movie was pretty unique on how like those fucking sets where like the earth is raised up to skyscrapers and like skyscrapers now act as canyons and waterfalls and shit like that. It was like there was so much effort put into this world.
Yeah.
And there's so many more nooks and crannies to sort of get through.
And that's the best thing about like a good sci-fi movie will take its time in the details like that and make you want to think of the greater world and like the story at large, like there's a greater story there, and we're kind of just telling one piece of that, or we're kind of being shown just one piece of that through one lens, one perspective. And I love that through each frame I can get lost in that world, and like just seeing like a city is buried down there, and this guy's driving a motorcycle on top of that, and he's holy fuck, it's just everything I love about sci-fi. It's just such a care and attention to the details, and like that's I don't know if Death Stranding took inspiration from it, but there's like some plot similarities, but major visual similarities, with like just how it's shot and like maybe even where they shot it. If this film was shot in Iceland, which I think it was,
Parts of it were.
Parts of it were, right. So yeah, then big visual inspiration from that. But like, you know, like just the idea of a story taking perspective of from like a worker's perspective. Like initially when we meet Jack as a character, he's Tech 49, like he's what we're told as the leftover cleanup crew on Earth and just doing these menial task jobs. And I love how we're introduced to the world in that kind of a way. And like we see him just carry out these routines, and we see all the equipment he handles, and like, you know,
we see his daily life, and what's normal for him. So when we're given that call to adventure, we can sort of come along with him on that.
Yeah.
So we know we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah. And what rating was this movie? A PG-13, I assume.
It was, because originally
R.
Disney was the one who was producing it.
Okay.
But they forced it to be PG, and he backed out and he stood his ground, and then Universal picked it up and they allowed the PG-13. So
okay, good. Like fucking clap, thumbs up, all the love to Tom Cruise for that. Because like this hit PG-13 to the fucking limit. There were some scenes that were just like had me like, holy fuck. I'm watching this at home but having a full-on theater experience, you know? That it's just like, it's violent, but it's like, you know, when the scene in like the drone is coming into the rebellion cave or whatever.
Yep.
And just starts blasting away, and you see bodies explode, like evaporate. And you know, I fucking love that. Not to sound gruesome or whatever, but like when a movie just takes risks like that, like this, that could have easily just been like, holy fuck, tone it down. But you know, it's not like, these are the circumstances that the film sets up, the stakes that it sets up. Is like, yeah, you need to see shit like that to really care about the characters ultimately. So I think it hits the nail on the head for tone and yeah.
You talk about a cinematic experience, and it really is just that. It's uniquely a cinematic experience, and I think a large portion of that has to do with the sound design of this movie.
Oh yeah,
like
the score and the sound design for sure.
I want to like touch upon, like you talked about the drones. Like the drones have some sort of menacing personality, and I attribute that highly to that sound design. Like that drone sound is really unique, and I have no idea how they did it. Or the sound of the scavs, like scavs communicating with each other.
Oh right, yeah.
Right, like
it's you would think like, oh, these are like alien sounds, but they're probably recorded from just the most basic things that are just probably tweaked a little bit. But yeah, it just sells it all the more, you know. It's just those little details. Yeah,
that's like everything in this movie is like meticulous.
It's well thought out. Yeah,
it's well thought out.
It's like, I would think, like, if I compare it to other sci-fi films, like Blade Runner is what I will always compare as a great sci-fi film to other things, but this kind of, I would say, stands on its own 2 feet really as a sci-fi cinematic. I don't want to say a masterpiece, because there's some gripes I have with it, but very small gripes. Like that narration, I think I'll get over it in second or third viewings, but you know, at the end of the day, I will watch this movie a second or third time just to keep seeing, from a visual standpoint, that world and like that story. Like, did you get Star Wars vibes a little from this story? Because I did, like majorly.
I know I didn't get Star Wars whatsoever. I got
no.
Well, maybe like in the last part, but
the third act. Okay, no, the third. I'll say more specifically, the third act is big Star Wars vibes. In the sense, almost not even just the original Star Wars, but from episode 4 to 9, almost kind of condenses that story, or at least bits and pieces I found of that story, and does certain things even a little better. And like how Star Wars is almost taking the simplistic narrative approach and just, you know, just telling an epic story like that. Like this kind of gets within those specificities and just kind of blows them up. I found like this really gets into the point, and getting into spoilers here, but gets into the point of a soldier turning away from the cause that he was kind of programmed or brought up to follow, and like finding a new cause, a quote unquote rebellion, and like giving his, or like dedicating his whole life towards that, or like, you know. And yeah, I'll let you go. I'll let you kind of go before I want to get my big spoiler kind of thing out of the way. But yeah, did you, after kind of seeing it a second time, did you get that sense or no?
No, I always, this is way more sci-fi than Star Wars is sci-fi.
For sure, yeah.
So
Star Wars is more fantasy than sci-fi. I wouldn't even put Star Wars in the realm of sci-fi.
Yeah, no.
And this movie also, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this movie also begs a lot of those sci-fi questions, like just like what it means to have a soul. Like, what is a soul? You know, like, who are we?
In terms of great technological advances, like, where does humanity fit in that?
Yeah.
And this
exactly. Yeah.
This movie does that pretty well, I thought. What was it? Oh yeah, in terms of like the story structure, like I like looking at, if you take large genres, there's a general template for each genre, and I like exploring that. So for example, I give you Western stories. Like, Western stories is person comes to town, there's a problem, person solves problem, leaves town. Simple story. For sci-fi stories in general, it's group of people face environmental problem, in terms of like there isn't like a general antagonist, there's a problem.
Well, the world is their antagonist.
Yeah, the world is their antagonist, and they need to find.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and they need to find they need to use ingenuity to fix that problem for themselves.
I think sci-fi is a lot. It's a like, as a genre, it's a vehicle to get into humans' problems. Like, how do you explore what being a human is? The best way is to compare humanity to something it on the surface really isn't. You know, machines, like the things that we create as humans, it's what splits us from what is human at the end of the day. You know, like a cell phone is the furthest thing away from what a human being is. You know, it's cold, it's robotic, it's like, it's detailed in precision and purpose and all that kind of stuff, where humans are lost in what we're trying to do, and all the confusion is within the humans. So I think what a sci-fi film, or as a genre, I guess, just tries to do is explore that range. It's such a big range, and that's what I'm so drawn into of it. Of like you're saying, Western has these tropes also, the gunslinger, the bounty hunter, the lonely cowboy who's coming in to save the day, or, you know, whatever it is, whatever it may be. Like, sci-fi also has these symbols and tropes. One is like just the world, the setting, like how is that imposing upon the main character, the protagonist, or whatever, you know what I mean? And you get that in this movie. Like, sci-fi should just build upon those things and try and show it to you in new ways, or kind of twisty or creative ways. And like, my takeaway from this movie was like, here's something, like, we'll give you something that, you know, you've seen Blade Runner, you've seen all these sci-fi, so we'll give you something along those lines, but show you it in a way almost that you weren't going to expect. We'll take you around a couple times in a circle, and then, you know, finally show you something new, I guess.
Right, but still harping back to that main thing about humanity.
Classic.
So
yeah, the classical things, yeah.
Right, so I'll get into like a minor spoiler here, but like the sort of like the thesis, I guess, is that, or the sent home message is that, like, you can't doubt humanity. Like, humanity was Sally's downfall in the end. So
humanity coming together, or
no, it's like okay, well, full spoilers now. It's Sally underestimated humanity. She thought that she could just control Jack and use him in a way that's like just
right, like
disposable to her.
Yeah.
But little did she know that like humanity is stronger than she can ever imagine, and like through recollecting his memories and then eventually finding his wife, and like because of that he's able to overcome the very thing that dehumanized him in the first place.
Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, he never lost his humanity, no matter how much Sally or the machines tried, I guess, to the amount of times they replicated him and hopefully were trying to attempt to scrub his memories further. You know, it didn't work. That humanity stuck. And that's another cool thing I found in this movie. It leaves ambiguous who those aliens are. Like, it's very 2001, leaving you with that red eye, red dot kind of main villain. I thought that was cool. Like, who the fuck are these guys that just blew up the moon and took over Earth and, you know, are basically just cloning this guy over and over again?
Yeah, we don't need to know.
We don't. No. I agree. I 100% agree. We don't need. But those questions, you know, when it begs you those questions, like you said, like, why didn't this movie get graphic novels or sequel or like?
Here's the thing, though. Sorry, who was the director for this movie again?
Joseph Kosinski.
Okay, he started writing this as a graphic novel.
Really?
He started writing it as a graphic novel, and it was going to be published as a graphic novel, but he eventually just went, I like this idea too much, I want to make a movie out of it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm finding it on Google now. There is a book on it, actually, which came out earlier. Oh, okay, this is interesting. So the movie is based on a book originally. Like yes, but no. By Joseph Kosinski.
Yeah, yes, but no. Because the book wasn't finished before the movie was finished.
Oh, okay, so they were kind of working in parallel, and then he just said, fuck it, I'll make it into a movie.
Right, and that's what I think killed it. Killed its potential. Because if he had made a graphic novel and had allowed room to explore more stories further on, like, you could have had adaptation material.
See, maybe, but like, you know, like other sci-fi movies usually don't need to bank on that it needs a graphic novel beforehand. Usually the movie kind of stems that in the first place. One of the things that I thought honestly held it back maybe from reaching that in a weird way could have been Tom Cruise. Like, I to me, like, when the movie came out, I just saw this as another Tom Cruise movie. And maybe that's to my bias and like just a flaw at that time of how I saw movies and Tom Cruise as an actor, but like, you know, like you almost picture a less mainstream actor in that role. Like, you know, you want less of a known face. Like, I don't want to see Tom Cruise and know it's Tom Cruise. Like, this movie does a good job in immersing me into a world and into the character of Jack, but there's a lot of times where it's just like, you know, that's fucking Tom Cruise. You can't get around that.
I thought the exact same thing. The exact same thing. I was like,
yeah.
Like, I get why they casted Tom Cruise because it's fucking Tom Cruise, and this movie needs.
Who wouldn't? You know, yeah. Who wouldn't cast Tom Cruise?
But like, I wish they casted some sort of unknown where I could like go even further into the movie, right?
Yeah, because Morgan Freeman fucking is in this movie, and he is epically awesome. In the character he plays.
Oh yeah,
this is one of the best Morgan Freeman roles. Like, he's total badass.
But what was I getting into? Like, there's what like you would just be like immersed in the story, then Tom Cruise would do like a Tom Cruise thing, and you'd be like, oh, that's Tom Cruise. Yeah. When he's
for sure.
Like, it's just the one line I was laughing at so hard, where it's like right after, what's her name? Olga, his wife.
Olga's her name? I don't know. I didn't catch her name.
No, I didn't catch her name. I think Olga's the actress's name. Anyways,
okay.
His wife
Julia.
Julia. Jack and Julia, right?
And his wife is always Julia, like in every movie too. Do you realize that? Like in Mission Impossible, the wife's name is Julia too. Like, sorry, I just reminded me of that too.
I guess they kind of just maybe sent him the wrong script.
It was low-key a Mission Impossible sequel, and he's like, oh, I like this in space. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. It's really far in the future.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it's good. It's good. Scientology. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how we're already doing the voice, because I was just getting at like when she gets done telling him.
I know. Yeah.
She's his wife. He's like, that's impossible. That's impossible. I'm just like, okay. That's Tom Cruise.
Exactly. Yeah. There's just in his mannerisms, it just says it a lot. Like,
his head bobbles so much when he tries to be dramatic.
His smirk, or his little smirk that he gives.
Yeah.
And you know, Edge of Tomorrow does it a lot too, but I think it plays into the favor of that movie because he's kind of a douchebag in the beginning of Edge of Tomorrow. Like, he's kind of an asshole, like a bit of a like into his celebrity, like as a character. So I guess like in Edge of Tomorrow, like it's just more viable like as Tom Cruise, but in Oblivion because of the character he played, I'm much what like that's Jack Harper, clone trooper essentially, right?
Yeah.
So I would like that. That's the joke I was waiting to say this whole time. Like that's when he says like when he goes to see Sally and he's like, "I'm Jack Harper." I was like in my head the line after that is clone trooper, like because that's what you are, bro. You're the clone trooper.
I want to see a movie on the because they talk about the initial invasion of the Tom Cruises.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how the apocalypse happened. Was this thing made a bunch of clones of Tom Cruises and he just sent them down and slaughtered everyone?
Thousands of them. Like yeah, that's crazy. That's and then you see a little hint of that the in their fetus chambers, all the Tom Cruises and the woman that he was with in the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just the backstory we got of the war that happened, you know. See, like I guess a little bit of my gripes was we were just told a lot of those things, like even that little faction rebellion thing. Like I wish we just saw kind of a little more of that rather than being told that. And I guess because like yeah, this is coming from a book story kind of format, so you know
it is a big world to try to get out in a cohesive manner, so it does get,
I guess, yeah,
there is a lot of exposition that
needed. Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't say needed because there are better ways to tell it, but
yeah, exactly, it's how you show that exposition because you need to tell essentially to enforce the world. Like we need to be shown but also kind of told these stories of the world, but I would think how you tell those stories or how you tell the aspects of the world. Like what I'm trying to say is like how when he's riding his bike across the wasteland and you see the city underneath the kind of ground that he's on and like how those are skyscrapers, so like what the fuck happened there, you know? Like that's such an intriguing way of kind of diving into that aspect of the story, you know?
Right And there's like a lot
like,
of there's a lot of instances of that. Sorry, you go ahead.
There is a lot of instances. Imagine if he saw like dead body versions of himself, his other clones around, and that's how he realized like he's just one of many. Yeah. You know, like that would have been fucking horrifying, like even as an audience to just watch that. So
I want to know what Tech 74 is up to.
He's probably I mean blown up.
Like after Sally gets blown up, like what happens to the other techs?
Okay, so if we're talking about the ending now, well, that's what we'll get into. Julia ends up living with Tech, what was it, 52?
52, because 49 committed suicide, or did a kamikaze.
He did a kamikaze, heroic save the day moment, which was, you know, well earned. It was good. Like, that's a good, I was kind of comparing it to Star Wars earlier with that. Like, I wish that's the story we got with Rey. Like, I don't mean to divert conversation a little bit, but, like, I'm kind of going to get into it. But, like, if they showed Rey as a clone in episode 9, and her whole purpose of the story was kind of to do what Jack Harper does in this story, which was, like, bring humanity together and, like, just take down that final evil, like, kamikaze style. Like, you know, like, that would have just at least given her as a character more value. Trying to say, like, you know, you're not who you were made to be. You're not this product. You're not this soulless being with no purpose. Like, you created your destiny at the end of the day. And I think that was a big theme of this film, was like, what is your soul? Like, what is your purpose and destiny in conjunction with your soul? Like, you know, what does all that mean? And like that just kind of gets into a bit of the ending of it. Like, it doesn't run the whole course of the film asking those questions. That's just like a little bit of the end, but I appreciated that questioning for sure.
Yeah.
I got into a lot there, but yeah, probably like going from Star Wars to a whole bunch of other shit.
Yeah,
but
I'm not sure how to end this because like there's, I was just disheartened because because the world set up had a lot of potential to be expanded upon, like not necessarily just in movies, but it's a cool world to get into, and there's lots of story potential within that world. And the story they told within the movie itself was really good. I think it's a shame that, like, and we'll talk about Edge of Tomorrow, but like Edge of Tomorrow gets a lot of praise still, despite not like making a lot of money at the box office.
Yeah.
It still gets a lot of praise, and rightfully so. But like,
it got more attention.
Yeah,
I think,
Oblivion
like,
doesn't
as
get
a
that.
Good sci-fi film. No, it doesn't.
It just doesn't get
something
that.
I just realized that from the director Joseph Kosinski, another sci-fi film that he made was Tron Legacy.
I've actually never seen that.
Underrated. Oh, like that's a film like I think it kind of falls in specific crowds. Like I've talked to a bunch of people who like, you know, that it has its own like cult following at this point. Like again, it'll be a timeless film, but for specific people, like people who really love the music or the visuals, like love the movie. But you know, another movie that he directed and amazing potential in the world it sets up that just wasn't carried through in any way. But if you haven't seen Tron Legacy, I would definitely say, yeah, you would like it. Like you should get into that.
And I speak to you, audience, if you haven't seen Oblivion, and even though we just spoiled and kind of like rambled on it, still go and watch it. And it's great.
We gave away some pretty big points there, I guess, at the end of it, but I think it's still worth to see. Like honestly, like going into it, like just because we had pre-planned to watch this movie, I wouldn't have watched this movie, I think, otherwise. So I'm glad, like this, if anything, like this podcast really is just a good way to just watch movies that otherwise we wouldn't watch, whether it's me or you. But in doing so, like just kind of in the perspective of life where we are now, like I wouldn't have got the same reaction in 2013 from this movie than I would now. Like I can see a lot more value in movies like this. So even if we did spoil it for you guys, like I'm sure like if you're into the sci-fi genre, Oblivion itself is like you shouldn't miss it. Like this is a movie that people should watch for sure.
Yeah, I went in knowing the twist. I went in knowing that the twist was going to happen, and I was still able to thoroughly enjoy it.
It doesn't take away. It just really, not knowing just really adds to the whole appeal, I guess. Because, yeah, like, it just sets up a really cliche movie, and it doesn't go that way. It kind of okay, the more I think about it, it is kind of cliche, but it's really good. If that makes sense.
Right.
It's not cliche, but it's really good.
It impressively, and I hate this fucking term, it subverted my expectations.
That's the least favorite term coming into yours or mine ears.
Yes,
at this point.
But it did do that, and it did that well.
Yeah. So yeah, coming from that's like a 2 thumbs up, I guess, from us. Definitely would recommend this movie.
Hopefully, it becomes a cult classic one day.
Yeah, it doesn't have that reputation right now, unfortunately. Like I don't know, like I could see Edge of Tomorrow living up to that, but Oblivion, I think it'll be like even what's lesser than a cult classic. It'll be like, you know, I think people will see Oblivion or remember Oblivion as a Tom Cruise movie, but for the people who have seen it or like who are into the sci-fi will like actually appreciate it, hopefully more for a good sci-fi film.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of good sci-fi films, Edge of Tomorrow is pretty fucking sweet.
Another Tom Cruise film, yes.
And
another good Tom Cruise sci-fi film at that.
Like, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. This movie is so clever.
Yeah.
And its concept it plays with?
Yeah, so it's, if you haven't seen it, it deals with the Groundhog Day, I guess, element of storytelling. That Groundhog Day, the film, iconically kind of told in that the day just keeps repeating over and over again, but kind of the world that it sets up around that is so cool, and like, you know, we've never really seen a story like this before. So why don't you get into it? What did you like about it?
Quite a bit. Tom Cruise was really good in this movie. Surprise, surprise. I really liked again with like the world building. This less so because it's more of a contained story. You can't really expand on the world outside of it. But within the contained story, the world feels really realistic. Like the technology used, the language used, the scenario. All of it was like completely realistic like sci-fi setting to really get into. And I appreciate those quite a bit. Like Oblivion was like less so realistic, but like not as much, but this was like hyper realistic in a way. It's like,
Yeah, it was almost like modern day. Like this is something that you could see happening, like in today's world, probably.
yeah, like a lot of the technology used is still looks futuristic, but like not in the sense of
It's not like it's not Oblivion futuristic.
No.
Whereas, like I guess what you're trying to say, like Oblivion is like what we think the future looks like, where Edge of Tomorrow is like what the future is most likely actually going to look like.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it's a much more brutalist warfare. Like the exoskeleton suits that they wear and use aren't pretty. They're not sleek. They're bulky and they look like they're weighing you down. Like you can't really fight in them. You know, that's like one of my first takeaways from even like the trailers when this movie came out. I was like, holy shit! Like they didn't like tone themselves down on the design of this movie at all. Like the art design, they really leaned in on sci-fi elements and like just out there kind of military stuff, which I thought was cool.
So yeah, like the world, the setting, everything was like really easy to jump into. Again, I want to talk about like the uniqueness of the enemy. They did a really good job of differentiating it. Like it's like a typical alien invasion, but like the aliens are like way different than anything I've ever seen before. Like the design, like the art team and the design team like did a really, really good job.
So how they work as aliens are, like you said, they're very unique and they're smart. Like it just goes back to like the smart writing of the movie, but like they're smart aliens, which is cool. They're not just like they don't make mistakes. That's like the whole setup point. They've thought everything through. They're not aliens that make mistakes. So it gives a lot of like weight to what the characters' actions are. Like every action is of importance basically, even though it's like a live die repeat scenario. It's like the aliens are always one step ahead, so how are they gonna outthink the aliens, or like how will they be written out of the situation almost? But it never relies on, you know, like writing out of a situation. It just stays within the world of the story throughout the film, you know?
Right.
It doesn't cop out ever.
No, never really. It stays like it has defined rules, and it has like really high stakes, and it has a situation that's like almost impossible to overcome, but that sort of lends to good sci-fi stories where it's like you have this environmental threat that gets handled with ingenuity, and like that makes the like we all knew, I'm guessing like you knew how this movie was going to end, like given like the 25-minute mark, but the way it ends is still satisfying for the audience, even though you know what's going to happen.
For sure. And yeah, it sets you up with that ending early on, like from a visual standpoint, like you know that's going to be an ending kind of where their end off will be in that place, but you know you feel like, oh shit, like you accomplished something at least getting through the movie. Like it gives you a sense of fulfillment, I find, getting to the ending. Right,
they earned, like it's like you know the ending's coming,
earned.
You know what's happening, but like the ingenuity and the character development that gets you to that point, it makes it all worth it. It's like it's a really good journey movie.
Yeah, a good journey movie, and a good I don't want to say like buddy cop movie. It's not really a buddy cop movie, but a good duo, a good action duo.
A great action duo. You're right.
Great action duo. Emily Blunt, who's also in this movie, is like awesome. Like fucking badass, bro.
Yeah, her, and then like they expand on other badass characters later in the movie as well. So it's like they have really good character. Like again, I'll go back to like the Alien franchise and the sequel Aliens, where they have like nothing characters, that are part of the military, but they're really like fleshed out in minor ways, and they have their own unique personalities, and it
Yeah.
really lends to improving the movie and like
the world.
Yeah, the world, and then adding some longevity to the story as well.
Yeah, there's that one like the techie character. You know, like all sci-fi stories, I guess, kind of have that. But I found him kind of funny. Like that, you know, like that's what it does. Like it doesn't waste characters. You know, I hate when a movie will just throw away a character just for like either a line or just to give an exposition. Like no, there's always you get a sense like these are people in the world who play a important role in everything. Like whether it's even if they're just comedic relief, like you get a sense like okay, like that's the funny guy in the military of this corpse, and he's gonna die because he's an idiot. Like, you know, and guess what, he died. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's like we can like go on for like character really drives this movie forward, in my opinion. But I think what really sends it home is like the implementation of the base concept of the movie is so clever, and I couldn't help but laugh and smile throughout the movie as they used it in like such clever ways. And if you don't know, it's like in this movie, Tom Cruise's character, which I'm just going to call Tom Cruise because I forget his character's name already.
It's probably Jack.
It's probably Jack. Anyways, Jack Cruise gets, it's explained later on, but he gets the ability to restart the day after he dies. And restart back to a set point. So that allows him to gain lifetimes of experience within a day. So
yeah,
they really play with that concept really well in like really funny ways in a lot of ways.
For sure.
Like really badass ways in some ways where he's like doing like no look, like he just knows what's going to happen because exactly. Who knows how long or how many times he's lived through that.
Exactly. And they just hint at that. They never, like, he says it himself, like, it gives you a lifetime worth of experience, basically turning a guy from who is a deserter in the beginning, essentially, like, you know, not a fighting man into a fighting man. You see that journey, which is fucking sick. And like there's so many things I found funny. There's like, again, this movie pushes PG-13 again in like the best way. There was a little bit where they're trying to they're like Emily Blunt's character is training Tom Cruise, and he's thinking out loud like, have you guys tried of like spreading this power here? Like, have we tried to share the power that I have? Like, and Emily Blunt goes, yeah, like we've tried it all, blood transfusion, everything. And Jack Cruise goes, oh, but you know, have you tried it all? Like, you know, I was thinking about this thing for a while, but like, what if we fucked? You know, what if we had some sex? Like, you can tell, like, this guy, you know, like, obviously it's there's a romance thing building up there, but like the way they show that, and like, this guy is still at the end of the day thinking like, yeah, this girl is hot, like he wants to smash, and like just the way they played it off was pretty fucking jokes.
Oh yeah, like a lot of things they play off as jokes at the beginning, but like they'll expand on it as you would if you're reliving it over and over and over and over again.
Well, that just builds into the relationship also of those characters, because a lot of cliches in kind of any kind of movie is always the romantic, you know, like any big movie has to have the romance and like the romantic chemistry and blah blah blah. And like, if we could compare to Oblivion for a sec, like I didn't buy the romance or that, you know, relationship as much in that movie, even though it's integral to that movie. I just didn't buy into it as much. And again, partly the reason, like, Tom Cruise and the actress is like some no-name actress, so there's just things that didn't really work out. But whereas in this movie, like, they take the time to like share or like show you the building of that connection, like whether it's just starting off with glances to like low-key jokes and these innuendos and whatever, until like the end where he's like truly cares for her, and like that's shown cinematically, that's shown over through the progression of time, which like this movie just like does really well, is use that Groundhog Day way of storytelling.
Yeah, I guess in Oblivion it was more of and that's kind of like poor writing on their part. Like a character was a plot device, which is never really like always the best thing. It's like she was just there to substitute for plot in a way. It's like they never really gave her a character in Oblivion, whereas obviously, this one they. And a lot of movies don't do this nowadays, where you just have scenes where they sit and talk, like, and especially in action movies. Like, you know, I'll bring up Star Wars now, where you have Empire Strikes Back. Like, the first part of Empire Strikes Back is like nothing. It's just characters talking, and it really paces out the movie, and it like really expands on character, because I think we can both agree character within a movie is probably the most defining factor. It's where you remember the most. Yeah. About the characters and who are they and what they stand for. And so what was really jarring about the second film in the latest trilogy is you don't get that. You get action right away. You don't have time to breathe, right? And this movie really gives you time to breathe. Like, it's not just nonstop action, as much fun as that would be, because the action scenes within this movie are fucking fantastic. Yeah. But it gives you like, time to decompress from that. For sure. But I never found, like you're saying, the movie allows you time to breathe, yet it still maintains a nonstop pace. You know, like, there's a sense of urgency throughout the film. There's a sense of like, okay, they have to get to this place. And within which is so like a testament of good filmmaking and like a good story, but within the action, they let these moments kind of come out, these like breathable moments. Like, there's things that you're just like fully like aware of, like the things that were set up or just moments of growth for the character that are visually displayed. Like, there's these things, very repetitive things that we see over and over again, like the same scenes that are from a shot perspective shot the same, and that's just to enhance the idea, like, okay, he's living the same day over and over again. But, you know, like how his mannerisms and like how his persona just over the time kind of changes and how his relationships change is what's important at the end of the day. And like, they never like sacrifice those relationships or those deep moments and moments of growth for like, oh, here's something cool, because at the end of the day, they work hand in hand. They're both cool things. Like, and if you can show them at the same time and like kind of maintain that balance, then, you know, the movie worked hand in hand is what I'm trying to say. Right. And structurally and from a narrative standpoint, I think this movie is better than Oblivion, but I think Oblivion's ceiling is higher. If that makes sense. Are you saying in the sense of storytelling potential? Storytelling potential, Oblivion, and like in the sense of, storytelling potential. Like, this is a very defined story. Like, I don't know where you'd go from here. No, you said it best. It's contained. Yeah. Like, the story ends not as soon as like, you can, you know, like a good story, you can kind of think further into what's going to happen, what's going on. But yeah, Edge of Tomorrow is pretty contained. Like, it does kind of tell you a good world building story, like in the sense it drops you into this event that's already happened and occurred, and you're kind of just a working man, not a working man, but you're just like one of the regular guys who's put into the situation of like figuring it all out and having to come up with a solution. So in that sense, it is still very sci-fi. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, Oblivion just has a lot better potential in terms of where it can go. But like, again, like why would Oblivion be less of a successful movie? Because, you know, like, money wise, Edge of Tomorrow still made quite a bit of money for its budget. Like, it's $178 million budget and made $370 million, so almost $400 million as a box office. And that, like, for an original sci-fi movie, that's a pretty good, like, Tom Cruise aside and whatever, but like, that's a pretty good return. Not as original as Oblivion, though, which is the thing. Because it's based off of a Japanese story. Edge of Tomorrow is? Edge of Tomorrow is based off of a Japanese manga or comic book, and that comic book is based off of a novel. Oh. So it's like a third layer, like it's... I see. Like, it's been adapted a couple of times. Yeah, it's really far away from the source material.
Yeah.
but it still has the basic idea. Whereas Oblivion was a completely original idea created by somebody, which
Yeah.
is why like I am a little disheartened that
Yeah, it's an original story, and you get a sense of this. Like, it is very original, and that's funny that you mention the anime in kind of storytelling there too, because there's some things that in Edge of Tomorrow that are like straight up ripped from a manga, like Emily Blunt's character carrying that big ass Inuyasha type of sword, like that's just sick.
a sword
I
that's
was
way
gonna
too
say
big
that
for
earlier.
anyone to carry, but
Yeah, it's just badass. It's just like a slab of metal that she's just hauling and chopping with.
for sure. So yeah, when I say it's like Edge of Tomorrow is just it's a better movie. I had probably more fun viewing that movie than I did Oblivion, but um, Oblivion I'm a little more disheartened that it wasn't watched. And I think
Yeah.
like there has to be not something that we could do, but like I wish there was more of a way to, and I guess like we can kind of use this as a platform, but there needs to be more of a way to get that story out there so we can sort of I don't know, maybe
See more
maybe
of that
make
world.
something of it down the road.
Yeah. Well, you never know. Like, I think sequels are always potential. Like, the fact that this world exists probably will never take the idea of a sequel in any form kind of off the table. Like, I'm reading here that a sequel for Edge of Tomorrow is apparently in planning as of right now. So if that movie can have a sequel, then why shouldn't Oblivion? You know, like that. If one deserves a sequel or an expansion of, you know what? I'll say it like this. Actually, best Oblivion probably doesn't need a sequel in a movie sense, but it could use for more content for that world, whether it's prequels or side stories. It gives that allowance, like it gives that intrigue. You know, I would want to see a prequel movie into Oblivion, or just a side story of one of those from the soldier's point of view. Whereas Edge of Tomorrow, like if it's based off a manga, then you know, like I'll read the manga, then you know, or whatever. But like I don't even have that base interest. That's not really there. The story was contained well enough where like okay, I'm good with it at that point. And I think you feel kind of the same way. Like the fact that it's an original story, Oblivion, kind of is more enticing to you too, right?
Yeah, it stings because it's like there's there was so much. I find there's more love and care I think put into Oblivion than there is Edge of Tomorrow, and that's not to say that Edge of Tomorrow wasn't detailed written and there wasn't love put into it. Oblivion was obviously like a project that a lot of people, including Tom Cruise, were very passionate about. And
Yeah, it felt like a passion project.
yeah,
And yo, we didn't even mention it before, but you got Jamie Lannister hauling ass in Oblivion.
like yeah,
Like,
oh
that's-
jeez, I know, like I can't pronounce his name because it's way too Swedish, but like
We'll just call him Jamie, Jack's
like
friend.
this came out in 2013. When did Game of Thrones start?
I think 2012.
Yeah, the Game of Thrones. Hold on here. Season 1.
2011.
2011. So this is 2 years after Game of Thrones, season 1. So like, and he just kind of popped out of nowhere, and I was like, I audibly went, "What the fuck?" Because I forgot he was in
Yeah,
this
but-
movie.
He looks good in both those roles. Like that kind of brutish military guy. Like he played that well.
The brutish asshole, but later gains the respect of the main character, and
Yeah.
that cliche
He's
story,
noble.
but done
Yeah, he's noble in his own way, but he's still an asshole and a hard edged.
the noble asshole. What a fucking archetype of character.
I mean, he's that archetype essentially.
I love how we're just talking about Oblivion again, and that kind of just sort of seals the deal. And like, Edge of Tomorrow is a good movie, but like, we can't stop talking about Oblivion.
No, but Oblivion has a lot. Like we could talk about Oblivion for like another episode if we wanted to. Like I could just get into the I guess this episode we're talking about from the perspective or from the point of view of why a movie like that is not successful, but it leads for so many conversation, like good amazing visuals, amazing use of score and soundtrack. Like we barely touched on that, but like the score was just epic and like just moving and like grand and like everything you kind of want from this dystopian new world that is now Earth, you know, like it was exactly that, just a dystopian Earth.
You know, we could do that if you want. I'm totally down.
In like another episode, or continuing this?
Like we could, because we're getting up on the 2 hour mark soon, so I think we should maybe wrap this up soon. But I'm really down to still talk about Oblivion further.
Yeah, I could, man. Like, this is like, you know me, I'm into the whole art book collection thing now, and getting into the behind the scenes of films, and like, this is a movie that I knew a little bit of before watching it, which was like how it used that VFX wall technology, which the Mandalorian now uses. But off that like little bit, like, I would really be interested in getting to like the concept art of this movie, and like the thought behind all that kind of stuff, and the design. I think there's a lot of stuff there.
Sure, like let's do it next week. We'll get some more research into Oblivion. I'll probably do another viewing.
Yeah. That'd be cool. Yeah,
I'm totally down. All right, it's settled.
Yeah, Chady, do you we did talk about something last week for our next episode in terms of a big episode discussion. Did you still want to do that next week, or save that for another week? I know it's a big.
It is a big one.
For that.
I kind of want to keep the momentum going on Oblivion.
Okay.
If you know what I mean?
Okay, so if we're talking Oblivion next week, let's continue the sci-fi discussion, because I'm really liking the theme of sci-fi here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then we can. Do we want to say what that big episode?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay.
We should tease it a bit.
So it's a really big episode in terms of content, because we have potentially 2 of the biggest franchises ever.
Well, not potentially.
They are.
Fair point. 2 of the biggest franchises ever.
So Sid's never seen Lord of the Rings, and that's starting to piss me off a little bit. So I'm going to force him to watch it. But we're also going to talk about like sort of cultural significance, and we're going to compare it and contrast it, and sort of see how it is on his spectrum with regards to Star Wars, because everything.
Well, I don't see. No, you're gonna paint it in the way that I compare everything to Star Wars.
Well,
or I hold Star Wars to the highest regard, which I might hold Star Wars to the highest regard. And if this, honestly, to play devil's advocate, I do talk a lot about Star Wars. Like, I mentioned Star Wars when we were talking about Oblivion. So, yeah, I could probably bring Star Wars into any conversation of life, which just talks, like, that's a testament to how great that story is, Cheney. You gotta fucking admit that. It's a great, bloody story. But, what we are gonna do is essentially talk, compare kind of maybe in a versus format, or kind of compare those epic stories and just the qualities of what makes stories epic. And like, Cheney kind of has the argument from how all of these epic and great stories are kind of based off Lord of the Rings, and I would argue against that kind of, and say Star Wars stands on itself. So I guess we're coming in from that kind of angle.
Yeah, for sure. I think the archetypal hero's journey is best exemplified through both these stories. But I think Tolkien's world and Tolkien's story was the first one to really envelop a story that was you know what? We'll get into it later.
We'll get into it. We're gonna drag this into a 4-hour episode.
Exactly.
But yeah,
so
we'll get into it in the next one. So stay tuned for that. That's gonna be a fun one, I would imagine.
But
because sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, next week more Oblivion and sci-fi talk.
Sci-fi talk, yeah. I think there's a big range of sci-fi. I think rather than just rushing into what movies to watch, let's talk about it kind of as the days progress. Let's kind of make a list maybe of what we want to watch and talk about.
Yeah.
In the sci-fi.
Yeah,
genre?
for sure.
Yeah,
in the sci-fi genre, and we'll kind of leap off that from our Oblivion talk. So. Yeah,
and we'll update the Instagram if you're not following our Instagram. Follow us on Mythic Morons, where we constantly post. We'll post some more stuff about like the movies we're watching and like just other fun things maybe. But yeah, we're active on there, so keep up with the conversations. Cheney, anything else you want to add?
No. Thanks for watching. I mean, fucking listening.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. All right. Signing off.
Signing off, guys. Thank you. Peace.